Night pressed against the glass like a cold hand. Rain ran down the tall windows of the private clinic in Chelsea. The corridors were empty, the floor shone like still water, and the ceiling lights buzzed in a low, steady way. A lift bell rang somewhere far off and then fell quiet again. Alice Bennett walked her round. She moved the way people move when they know every corner of a place. Her steps were even, her pockets light, her hair tied back. She checked the monitors, a green line, a soft beep, a number that held, then held again. She made a note in a paper log, neat letters, clear times. On the desk lay a thick pen and a small clock with a second hand that twitched forward and forward without fuss. The cabinet with strong pain medicine stood in the corner of the treatment room. It was heavy and gray, fixed to the wall. A seal hung on its doors. Do not break. The keys were on a red cord looped twice around her hand. She ran a thumb over the seal without opening anything, the way a guard checks a gate at night. On the shelf below, a lined notebook waited. Every entry in it had 2 names and a time. She turned one page, then another. The paper felt dry, the ink firm. Nothing looked out of place. A small camera watched from the ceiling near the cabinet. Its tiny light blinked once, then paused, then blinked again. Alice hardly noticed it anymore. Cameras, doors, keys, signatures, these were part of the air she breathed. She believed in simple order. If a patient hurt, help. If a dose was given, write it down. If a rule existed, follow it. First the patient, then the paper, she had told new nurses more than once. And then, after a beat, but always both. Outside, the wind pushed hard along the river. Inside, the ward hummed. Alice checked on a man who slept with a white band around his wrist and a faint crease between his brows. She smoothed the blanket and watched his breath lift and fall, lift and fall. In the staff room, she poured warm water over instant coffee and held the cup in both hands. On the notice board behind her, a printed sheet about a morning meeting slid loose at one corner, held by a tired pin. Her phone buzzed with a short message from the duty manager. Storm may disrupt morning shifts. Keep notes tight, she smiled without humor. Her notes were always tight. She washed the cup, dried it with a thin paper towel, and went back to the corridor. The lift bell rang again. The light on the camera blinked. The second hand on the small clock twitched forward once more. The call bell tore through the quiet. Alice set the cup down and ran. The man in bed 7 was awake now, eyes wide, breath fast and shallow. His hands gripped the sheet. "Pain," he whispered, and then again, louder. The monitor ticked on. Rain hammered the window. Alice pressed the nurse call to red and spoke into the wall phone. "Doctor to 7 now." She kept her voice level because panic wastes time. Thomas Reed stepped in moments later, coat still wet at the shoulders. He looked at the man, then at Alice. "We need the strong dose," he said. "Now." Alice moved to the cabinet. The seal on the doors was still unbroken. She took a breath, snapped it, turned the key on the red cord, and pulled the doors wide. Her hand went to the right shelf, to the right box, the one she had checked a dozen times before. There was a space where the medicine should have been. She stared at the gap as if her eyes could make the glass appear. She checked the next row. She checked the box behind. She checked the label on the shelf. The space stayed empty. Her mouth felt dry. She grabbed the paper notebook and ran a finger down the last line she had written before midnight. Everything looked correct, but the shelf did not match the page. "Second choice," Thomas said, soft but fast. "We cannot wait." He was by the bed, one hand on the man's shoulder. Alice reached for the backup drug, drew it up, checked the dose with Thomas, gave it. The man's face eased a little, but not enough. Minutes went by that felt like a tight knot. The lift bell rang far away, a small, wrong sound. The wind beat the windows. The man's breath slowed, then stuttered. They called for help. Hands moved, voices stayed calm. They did all the things that must be done. Dawn crawled up behind the storm. When the room was quiet again, the blanket was smooth, the white band on the wrist lay still, and the clock on the wall said 6:23. Alice washed her hands for longer than needed. The red cord with the keys felt heavy against her palm. She looked once more at the open cabinet, at the neat shelves, at the single space that should not be there. By 8, the corridor had changed. Men in dark suits stood by the reception desk. A woman with a neat tablet and neat hair spoke low to the duty manager. Cameras and vans idled across the street. Someone pinned a notice about a brief meeting at 9. On the ward, whispers ran ahead of the truth. At the meeting, the woman with the tablet chose careful words. "There will be questions," she said. "We must be clear on our story. There was a delay in giving pain relief. We need to say who was responsible for the cabinet and the keys." Eyes turned, not cruel, just hungry. Alice felt them and kept her face steady. "I kept the keys," she said. "I followed the rules. The dose we needed was missing." "That will sound like an excuse," the woman said. Her smile did not reach her eyes. "The press does not like excuses," Thomas spoke once. She did what had to be done. "The missing drug is the question." The woman's smile thinned. "Thank you, doctor. We will handle medical detail later. For now, we prepare a short statement." No speculation. The meeting broke. Papers were gathered. The suits drifted back to glass doors and phone calls. Through the window, Alice could see the river, brown and angry under the morning sky. She went back to the treatment room. The cabinet stood open, the torn seal on the counter like a small, dead thing. She wrote the time in the paper log. Her letters stayed neat. Her hand did not shake. Alice stood alone in the treatment room. The storm had eased. The clinic lights felt harsher for it. She closed the cabinet, laid the torn seal beside the red cord, and pressed both palms to the cool counter. "I will set this right," she said under her breath. "Not to save my name. To stop it ever happening again." She took the paper log and read the last 24 hours, line by line. Times, doses, 2 names on each line. Clear ink, steady hands. She turned back 3 pages, then 5. The writing changed with each shift, but the order held. If someone had played with the truth, it would show where the pen met the paper. Thomas knocked once and stepped in. He did not speak. He set a dry towel on the counter. It seemed like nothing, but she knew what he meant. "I am here." "I need the camera from the corridor," Alice said, "and the list from the front desk of who used the keys and when. Plain things." "Nothing clever," Thomas nodded. "I'll ask. I'll keep it simple." She put the log in a clear folder and walked to the security desk. The guard, an older man with kind eyes, looked up from his tea. She asked for a printout of door openings for the night. "You know, the little slip that shows the time and name," she said. He frowned at the request, then shrugged and pressed a button. A small printer hummed. Paper fed out with times in a thin gray font. Back in the room, Alice spread the printout beside the paper log. Time against time. Name against name. Her finger moved down the columns, tapping once when things matched, twice when they did not. The air felt colder near the window. She noticed a small curl in the corner of one page in the log, as if someone had pressed it with a damp thumb. A small thing. Still, a thing. She set her watch to the clinic clock. She wrote a fresh note in her own hand, 6 lines that said only what she had seen, done, and found. She added the minute and the second. She signed her name with the same calm letters she had used since her first day here. At 10, a message went round. The owner would address the staff at noon. People whispered his name as if it might help. Alice felt the words pass by like drafts of cold air. She looked at the gap on the shelf one last time and closed the cabinet again. The red cord lay on her wrist like a thin vein. She straightened the room, turned off the harsh top light, and left only the small lamp above the counter. The treatment room seemed to breathe out. In the corridor, the tiny camera light blinked its slow, patient blink. Alice walked toward the lift, the folder against her chest, her vow held tight and quiet inside. Alice laid everything out on the counter as if setting a table, the paper log, the slip from security with times and names, a pad for fresh notes, 2 pens. She drew a straight line down the middle of her pad and wrote what we know on the left and what we can check on the right. First, the times. At 1:10 she had checked the cabinet seal. She had written it in the log in her usual thin blue pen. The slip from security said the cabinet door was opened at 3:04 and the name beside the time was Bennett A. Alice looked at that name for a long breath. The letters were round where hers were straight. The tail of the T looped up. Hers never did. She turned back 5 older pages to find her own Bennett written on quiet nights. The shapes did not match. Second, the key. The red cord had not left her wrist. She could feel the faint groove it made on her skin. If someone opened the cabinet at 3:04 and wrote her name, they had used another key and her name as a cover. It was simple to say and clear to hear. Third, the numbers. On each box of the strong pain drug, there was a small white sticker with a short number. Alice read the numbers in the paper log and then read the numbers on the boxes still on the shelf. One line did not match by 1 digit. The 8 on the page looked as if someone had gone over a 3 to make it thicker. She did not circle it. She just wrote the words line 42, heavy 8 over 3 on her pad. Thomas came in and stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "Security will let us view the corridor camera from last night," he said. "They will print still pictures." "No sound." "Good," Alice said. "We do not need sound." They watched the footage later on a small screen in the guard's booth. The picture was gray and a little grainy. At 3:02, a figure in a cap and mask walked toward the treatment room. The person's stride was longer than Alice's, the shoulders broad. The camera did not catch the face. At 3:04, the person went in. At 3:06, the person came out, holding their hand close to their side, as if cupping something small and flat. There was no red cord on their wrist. "Was that person on shift?" Alice asked. The guard shook his head. "Not on my list," he said. He slid over a simple roster, names and ticks. The name did not appear there. Alice thanked him, took the printed stills, and went back upstairs. She checked the bins in the staff room, the way she had seen her grandmother check a coat pocket for a bus ticket. Careful, without fuss. At the bottom of one bin she found a crumpled gray strip with the words, "Do not break," half visible. She smoothed it with her hand. The tiny printed date on the strip was yesterday. The proper strip she had broken at dawn lay on the counter with today's date. 2 strips for one night was one too many. Back in the treatment room, she laid the 2 seal strips side by side and wrote a clean page in her pad, in full sentences the way she would say them out loud. At 1:10 in the morning, she had checked the seal and made her entry in the log. At 3:04, the cabinet door had been opened and her name written, but not in her handwriting. From 3:02 to 3:06, the corridor camera showed a person who was not on the shift list. She had found an extra seal strip with yesterday's date in the staff bin. One box number in the log looked altered. She signed the page and added the exact time. "Plain things," Thomas said, reading over her shoulder. "Straight lines. Anyone can follow this? That is the point," Alice said. She slid the page into a clear folder and placed it on top of the log and the still pictures. Outside, the rain slowed to a steady hiss along the window ledge. Inside, the facts began to hold. By noon, the clinic felt like a stage. Suits moved in packs. Doors opened and closed with soft clicks. A camera crew waited by the front steps under a black umbrella. Sir Jonathan arrived with a small crowd. He shook hands without looking at faces. In the staff lounge, he read a short statement from a sheet. He spoke of a regrettable delay, of a full review, of our strong rules. He did not say the man's name. He did not say Alice's name either, but people heard it anyway in the spaces between his words. After the speech, a woman from his team guided Alice into a side office. A lawyer sat there with a thin folder and a fixed smile. He slid 2 papers across the desk. The first was a 1-page summary of the night, already typed. It said the cabinet had been opened by Alice at 3:04. The second told her to keep silent about all details until the company finished its review. "It protects you," the lawyer said. "It shuts me up," Alice said. Thomas stood beside the door, rain still on his coat. He said nothing, but he did not move away. Alice pushed the papers back. Her hands were steady. Her phone buzzed on the table. A news alert lit the screen. A source claimed a nurse in Chelsea had caused a fatal delay. Another alert followed. A clip from outside the clinic. A headline with the word failure in large letters. Down the hall, staff stared at their phones with tight mouths. In the lobby, 2 reporters called out questions that began with, "Is it true?" The dead man's family arrived in the early afternoon. They were pale from the night and from the rain. The woman at the desk led them to a small room with bad coffee and a box of thin tissues. Alice went in and sat with them. She used plain words. She said what she had done and when she had done it. She said she would speak at the public hearing in the morning. She promised not to hide behind phrases. The son nodded once and looked at the floor. The daughter kept her eyes on Alice's face and did not blink. Back in the treatment room, the air felt thinner. Security brought more printouts from the desk downstairs. Times. Names. Door openings. A junior porter, nervous and eager to help, mentioned a supply cupboard near the loading bay. Alice and Thomas walked there together. On the top shelf sat a small box that should have been sealed. It had been opened and closed again with clear tape. Inside lay a few spare strips that said, "Do not break." Someone had taken what they needed and left the rest in a hurry. They brought the box to the guard. He logged it with a pen and a slow hand. Plain, visible steps. No hidden files. No clever words. By 3, the board set a closed review for 4. At the same time, a message came from the coroner's office. The public meeting would be held the next morning. The 2 paths pulled in different directions. The PR team wanted a short press talk at 5 with a clean line about one staff member's error. Sir Jonathan approved with a nod and a watchful look toward the doors. Outside, more cameras arrived. Inside, Thomas spoke in a low voice. "We take what we have to the coroner now," he said. "Simple things. Seal dates. Camera stills. The extra strip from the bin. The box in the cupboard." Alice held the clear folder tight to her chest. "Yes," she said. "We tell it in order. We let sunlight in." In the corridor, a man with an earpiece walked up to the PR woman and slipped her a note. She read it, and her face flickered. The note said the stock market listing planned for next week was at risk. She folded the paper in half and tucked it away. 2 officers arrived just before 4. They asked to take statements. The lawyer tried to steer the room. He said it would be better to wait. Alice looked at the officers. "I will speak now," she said. She gave them her folder, page by page, with calm words. She did not add feelings. She did not add guesses. She told what she had seen and what she had found. When the officers left, Sir Jonathan stood in the doorway. For a long second, no one spoke. Then he said, very quiet, "You have made this harder than it had to be." Alice met his eyes. "It was already hard," she said. The rain eased outside. The air smelled clean and sharp for the first time that day. Somewhere in the building a printer began to run, spitting out more neat sheets that would try to shape a story. Alice turned away from the noise. Morning would come soon, and with it bright lights, open doors, and questions asked out loud. Morning brought a hard white light. The room at the coroner's court was glass and pale wood. Rows of chairs faced a small screen. Reporters filled the back. The family sat in the front row, close together, hands linked. Alice took her seat. Thomas sat one chair away. He gave a small nod that meant, "I am here." Sir Jonathan sat with his team on the other side of the aisle. He stared at his phone. He did not look up. The coroner spoke plainly. "We will hear what happened in order," she said. Short answers. Simple words. The first picture came up on the screen, the quiet corridor at night. The next picture showed the same view at 3:02, a person in a cap walking toward the treatment room. Then 3:06, the person leaving. The face was not clear. The body shape was wrong for Alice. The room stayed very still. A guard from the clinic read from a sheet. "This is the printer slip from the door system," he said. "It shows times and names." He ran his finger under a line. 3:04. "Name, Bennett A." He frowned. "But the roster for the night does not list this person at that time. And Miss Bennett says she did not open the cabinet then." He set the two papers side by side. People could see the clash without any extra words. Alice spoke next. She kept her voice level. She said when she had checked the seal. She said when she had broken it. She said what she had found in the staff bin that morning, a torn seal strip with yesterday's date. She said, "If there are two strips in one night, one of them is wrong." She held both strips up so everyone could see the dates. Thomas described the care in a way that anyone could follow. "The patient was in pain," he said. "We planned the strong dose. When it was not there, we used the backup. We did the right checks. We worked fast. It was not fast enough." He did not raise his voice. He did not dress the truth. An independent doctor, Priya Shah, explained the cause of death in calm, careful lines. "The pain was severe," she said. "A stronger dose sooner could have eased it. But what I see here is not one person's laziness or a missed step. I see signs that the main drug was taken out before it was needed." That made a hole in the chain. She pointed to the photo of the empty space on the shelf. She pointed to the page in the book where a number looked rubbed and dark. "This is not chance," she said. "Someone planned to make this look like a simple delay." A clinic manager was called. He shifted in his chair. The coroner asked, "How many keys exist for the medicine cabinet?" He said, 3. She asked, "Where are they kept?" He said, "One on the red cord with the nurse on duty. One spare in a small safe in my office. One sealed in the main safe for emergencies." She asked, "Were they all in place last night?" He looked at his hands. "The office spare was signed out last week for repair work," he said. "It should have been signed back. I do not see the return line." The room felt colder at once. The coroner asked the guard, "Who signed it out?" He read a name that no one on the ward knew. The family in the front row looked at each other. A reporter's pen stopped moving for a second and then moved faster. The screen showed a last picture, the two seal strips side by side, the dates plain as day. The coroner spoke to the family. "You will hear more from the police," she said. "From what we see today, there is no simple error by this nurse. There is a pattern. We will send findings and advice to prevent this in the future." Sir Jonathan stood when asked. He tried to sound firm. "We have strong rules," he said. "We are shocked to see them broken." He started to list plans and reviews. The coroner held up a hand. "Thank you." No speeches. Outside, cameras flashed. The mother of the dead man touched Alice's sleeve. "Thank you for speaking clearly," she said. There were tears, but they did not fall. Two officers waited by the door. One of them said to Alice and Thomas, "We have more to show you. A delivery driver from last night has been found. He was paid in cash by someone outside the clinic gates." He paused. "He is ready to talk." The sky over the river was a flat gray. The air smelled like wet stone. Alice drew a slow breath. The story she had been forced into was turning. Not because she spoke well, but because the plain things were now in the open where everyone could see them. The police took Alice and Thomas to a small room with a glass wall. A delivery driver sat there pale and shaking. He spoke in a low voice. A man in a flat cap had met him outside the clinic gate after midnight. The man gave him an envelope of cash and told him to drop a small box at the back door, then take a different small box away and put it in a bin on the far corner. No questions, the driver said. He said it was just a swap to save time. An officer slid a photo across the table. Is this the man? The driver nodded fast. The man in the photo had a thin scar by his mouth. Downstairs, the guard brought out a street camera picture from the lane by the river. The same man with the scar stood beside a dark car. Another man handed him a roll of tape and a strip that said, "Do not break." The plate on the car was clear in the morning light. The officer wrote it down without a word. A young porter from the night shift came in next. He tried to be brave and then gave up. He told me to leave the cabinet room door on the latch when I took the linen, he said. He said it was for maintenance. He gave me £50. He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand. I am sorry. Who told you? The officer asked. The porter looked at the photo with the scar. Him, he said. He is not staff. I have seen him before, outside with men from Ellison Health. The room went quiet. The name hung in the air like a cold breath. By noon, plain things lined up. A spare key signed out and not signed back. 2 seal strips for one night. A false line in the book in someone else's hand. A stranger on the camera. Cash for a quick job. A box that should have been there and was not. None of it needed big words. Anyone could follow it. Up the river, in a glass room with a long table, the board tried to hold a closed review. Sir Jonathan kept his face calm and his voice flat. A note was passed to him. He read it, and the calm cracked. The stock exchange had paused his listing. The press outside had the word already. Phones lit up through the glass like a run of falling stars. 2 officers walked into the clinic with empty boxes and a short letter. They were polite. They asked for paper files, for printouts, for simple things. The sign-out sheet for the spare key, the visitor book, the cleaner's work orders, the press team's prepared notes. The lawyer tried to stand in the way. He stepped back when the officers asked him if he wished to be named as a person who refused to help. He sat down and signed a receipt. Staff watched as the boxes filled with folders and left through the front door in the open, not hidden. In the afternoon, a brown envelope reached the police station. No name on it. Inside were printed messages from the owner's office in the last 24 hours. The words on one stood out, "Keep it to 1 line and 1 person." Another said, "We do not mention missing stock." The officer who read them did not show his face. He just placed the pages beside the photos from the corridor and the street. A call came from a unit that knows faces and cars. The scarred man had a name. He worked private security for Marcus Ellison's group. The plate on the dark car matched a hire made in that name 2 days ago. A second call said the driver of the hire car had crossed town just before 3 in the morning and stopped for 6 minutes by the clinic gate. At 4, the press team tried to do a short talk on the clinic steps. The first question was, why was a man from Ellison Health near your back door at 3 in the morning? The second was, why did your office tell staff to blame 1 person? The third was, will the listing go ahead? The fourth, from the dead man's daughter, cut through all the others. Will you say his name? Sir Jonathan opened his mouth and then closed it. He looked smaller than he had in the morning. The PR woman stepped forward, then faltered, then stood aside. The cameras kept rolling. Alice did not speak on the steps. She stood with the family. She held her folder like a shield and did not need it any more. Her plain pages had done their work. The faces that had searched her for weakness now looked past her toward the glass car that had carried the scarred man through the rain. By dusk, police cars waited at 2 doors, one at the clinic, one at a sleek office across the river with the name Ellison on the glass. Men left with their hands behind their backs, not fast, not slow, just sure. In a corner office, a man in a dark suit stared at the city and did not turn when the officers entered. Power, which had sat all morning at a polished table, moved to a plain desk with a wooden top and a stack of paper in a hard blue file. The story no longer belonged to press lines or careful smiles. It belonged to evidence in daylight, to simple times and names. And for the first time since the night began, Alice felt the corridor air ease, as if a window had opened somewhere and clean wind had found its way in. Evening drew a hard line across the river. Lights came on in the glass office of the clinic. The board sat in a tight circle, papers neat, faces tight. 2 officers stepped in. No hurry. No raised voices. One laid a short letter on the table. "We are here with warrants," he said. "Please stay seated." On the screen at the end of the room, the first picture came up. The scarred man by the back gate at 3 a.m. Then a still of him taking a small box from a dark car. Then a still of him leaving with another box. A pause. The next picture showed a plain envelope with banknotes. The driver's statement lay beside it in simple words. A second officer read from a sheet. "Money moved from a company tied to Marcus Ellison," he said. "It paid the man with the scar. It paid a porter. It paid a driver. It paid for a story to be planted in the press." Sir Jonathan stared at the table. The PR woman looked at the door. No one moved. A third picture filled the screen. It showed 2 emails from the owner's office, printed out and underlined. Keep it to 1 line and 1 person. Do not mention missing stock. A fourth picture showed the spare key sheet with no return line. A fifth showed 2 seal strips with 2 dates for 1 night. The lead officer said, "This was not an accident. This was planned harm." His voice stayed calm. "It was set up to break a man's body, to break a woman's name, and to break a public sale on the market." The door opened. 2 detectives stepped in with a slim man in a dark suit between them. Marcus Ellison. He did not speak. He did not look at Sir Jonathan. The officers turned him toward the hall. In the sudden stillness, the dead man's daughter, who had been allowed in as family, spoke first. "Say his name," she said. "Michael," the officer said. "Michael Ward." The coroner, linked by video, gave 2 short lines. "The nurse is not at fault," she said. "The pattern shows a plan." Alice stood at the back. She did not step forward. She did not raise a hand. She held the folder, though she no longer needed it. Thomas stood beside her, a quiet wall. A final officer faced Sir Jonathan. "We have reason to believe you pushed staff to hide the truth," he said. "You may come with us to answer questions." He did not shout. He did not dress it up. He held out a hand. Sir Jonathan tried one last line. "I have rules," he said. "I asked for order." "You wrote to hide the whole," the officer said. "You told them to point at one nurse. You told them not to speak of what was missing." Sir Jonathan looked at the glass, at the river, at his watch. Then he stood. Outside, cameras flared in white bursts. Reporters called out, "Is the listing dead? Did you frame a nurse? Did Ellison buy a death?" The wind off the water cut the heat from the bulbs. The night smelled of rain and metal. In the crush, the mother touched Alice's sleeve. "You kept it simple," she said. "You kept our son human." Alice nodded once. Words were small things and had to be used with care. She said only, "I am sorry for your loss." A police car door closed on a click. Another closed. Engines started. The glass doors swung shut. The clinic lobby felt quiet, almost kind. On the notice board, a paper about morning meetings hung by a single pin. It no longer mattered. A different morning was coming. By morning, the river was the color of pewter. The news ran on every screen in the cafe across the street. The arrest of Marcus Ellison for planned harm that led to a death, the arrest of 2 helpers, the police statement that spoke of money, a swap of boxes, and a lie built to break a sale on the market. A short line at the bottom said the stock exchange had removed Sir Jonathan's listing from the calendar. At the clinic, an email went to all staff. It said the nurse on duty had no fault. It said her name should not be used in blame or in rumor. It said the rules would be checked by people not tied to the owner. The words were simple for once. No gloss. No spin. In a small press room, the coroner read a brief note. The nurse did not cause this death, she said. There was a plan. There were steps taken to make it look like her error. We will send advice so this cannot happen again. She did not stay for questions. Police gave their own update in plain lines. Ellison would face charges for planning harm and paying others to carry it out. The driver and the porter would face charges for taking money and doing what they were told. Sir Jonathan would face charges for telling staff to hide the truth, for pushing a false story, and for trying to block the facts. No one used long words. No one spoke fast. Cameras waited by the clinic steps. Alice walked out with Thomas, but did not stop. A reporter called her name and asked if she felt vindicated. She paused. A man died, she said. His name was Michael Ward. Please say his name. Then she moved on. Inside, the family met with a quiet official. There would be an apology in writing. There would be a plain account of what had happened. There would be a date to speak again, not in a court, but in a room without cameras. The mother held the letter with both hands, as if it might warm her. The board met without Sir Jonathan. Chairs stood empty at one end of the table. Phones were face down. A notice on the glass door said the review was no longer closed. Staff were welcome to give what they knew. People went in one by one and spoke in short sentences. They said what they had seen and when, and who had told them to stay quiet. The room filled with simple truths. By noon, the clinic website showed a new page, Statement to Patients. It named no scapegoat. It promised clear locks, 2 keys held by 2 people, a camera that looked straight at the cabinet, and a book that would be checked each day by someone from the outside. No fine phrases. Just steps you could picture. A car took Sir Jonathan from the police station to a court. He kept his head down. He did not wave. He did not speak. A second car took Ellison by a different street. The 2 men did not see each other. The city watched them pass as if it were watching weather change, slow, heavy, sure. In the staff room, Alice sat with a cup of tea that had gone cold. Thomas leaned on the doorframe. It is done, he said. Not done, Alice said. But moving the right way, he nodded. Outside the window, a gull rode the wind above the river. Inside, someone fixed the notice board at last, so no paper hung by a tired pin. In the late afternoon, the clinic sent a letter to each nurse who had worked the night. It thanked them for steady hands in a storm. It named Alice, this time with care, as the person who kept to plain facts when it mattered. The letter was short. It ended with a line that felt like clean air. We are sorry. Phones kept buzzing in other buildings, but the ward grew quiet. The green lines on the monitors held. The floor shone. A small clock's second hand twitched forward and forward again without fuss. Dawn was pale and quiet. The storm had gone. The clinic smelled of fresh coffee and clean floors. In the treatment room, the cabinet stood under a new small camera, pointed straight at the doors. 2 keys now hung on 2 cords, one red and one blue. They were held by 2 people at once. A short sign on the wall said, "Write what you do." Do what you write. The paper log was new. The first page had 4 clear lines and 4 clear names. Alice checked the room the way she always did. She read the first entries. She ran a finger over the seal and did not break it. She checked the clock. She took a breath that did not hurt. A letter waited on the counter in a plain envelope. It was from the board. It offered her a new role to watch the rules across the whole clinic group. Fewer nights. More meetings. More paper. She read it twice. She set it down. Thomas came in and placed a clean towel on the counter, like on that first morning. "Whatever you choose," he said. "I will stay on the ward," she said. "For now?" She smiled a little. "I like rooms where the light is honest," he nodded. It was enough. A week later, the clinic held a small moment for Michael Ward. No speeches. No cameras. Just a few words, a name, and a quiet minute. The family stood in the front. Alice stood at the back. She thought of a hand on a sheet, of breath that rose and fell, and of how truth needs daylight and steady hands. News moved on. The stock market date did not return to the calendar. The two men in dark cars now moved between courts and cells. Papers wrote long pieces and then shorter ones. The world kept its pace. On her next night shift, Alice walked the corridor in the soft hum of machines. She stopped by the notice board and fixed a loose pin so a page would not fall. She checked on a sleeping woman whose brow had the same small line of worry. She made a note in the book in neat letters, the way she had from the first day. At the end of the round she stood by the window. The river slid past, slow and steady. She looked at the city lights and then at her hands. They were the hands she knew. They had not learned big words. They had learned to keep things simple and in the open. She turned back to the ward. The green lines held. The floor shone. The second hand of the small clock moved forward and forward again without fuss.